Hey, what's up guys? This is Alicia Chilled Out, and today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about the differences between Ecosoya Wax Melt Wax and Kerasoy Pillow Wax 4120, which is what I generally used for making wax melts. Before I get into it, I just wanted to let you know this has got nothing to do with paraffin wax. Both of these waxes are based around soy. If I'm correct, I think Ecosoy Wax is completely soy and Kerasoy is a soy wax blend. So this has got nothing to do with paraffin wax. These are just soy waxes that I use personally for wax melts. Okay, let's get right into it. Ecosoya Wax Melt Wax tends to have a lower melting point compared to Kerasoy 4120. It's not a major difference, but you will notice that Ecosoya wax, if you use on, let's say, a double boiler to melt your wax or in a microwave, you will notice it'll take just a little less time compared to the Kerasoy. Okay, another difference between Ecosoya wax and Kerasoy wax is Ecosoya wax tends to have no smell whatsoever. This is when it's in its pellet form or when you get it in a block, it tends to have no smell. On the other hand, Kerasoy wax tends to have a little bit of a smell, which some people generally don't like. So keep that in mind when you're purchasing these wax. It's not like a major smell, but there is a smell associated with the Kerasoy wax, which you don't get with the Ecosoya wax. Ecosoya Wax Melt Wax, whenever I've used it to make wax melts, I've never got any frosting from it whatsoever. No matter what temperature I've poured it at, I've never had any kind of issues with frosting. On the other hand, with Kerasoy wax, I've had very minimal frosting. It's nothing that you would like really notice, but if you were really staring at it, you could possibly see little tiny bit of frosting, but it's nothing to that wouldn't inform my decision when making wax melts or choosing a wax to use to make my wax melts. It's just one of those things that if you're really studying it, you can see, yes, there's a tiny bit of frosting, especially when it's poured at a lower temperature, but it's nothing that I think is anything to even worry about. So there is that if you're really concerned with frosting. Ecosoya Wax Melt Wax has never given me any problems with frosting. Kerasoy, tiny bit of frosting, but nothing to even worry about. Another difference between these two waxes is Ecosoy tends to be a little bit more expensive than Kerasoy wax. I don't know if this is because Ecosoy wax claims to be completely soy and then Kerasoy is more of a soy wax blend, which changes the price. But yes, you will notice that Ecosoy wax tends to be just a little bit more expensive than Kerasoy wax. But if you're not worried about, spending a little bit more on soy wax, then you can go with the Ecosoy. But if you're a bit on a budget, then go with the Kerasoy. But it's ultimately up to you. The price difference isn't too big of a difference. So yeah, it's up to you. Another difference between these waxes is the fact that Ecosoy wax tends to hold a little bit more fragrance oil compared to Kerasoy wax. The difference isn't major, so Ecosoy holds 12% and Kerasoy holds 10%. You're not going to notice this when you're making wax melts, but if you're really concerned with the percentages and all that kind of stuff, then obviously Ecosoy holds a bit more fragrance oil compared to Kerasoy wax. But like I said, you're not going to notice it. 10% fragrance oil, especially if it's a concentrated fragrance oil, is going to last a very long time. But 12%, obviously you're going to get that little bit extra. So the choice again is up to you. Both of these waxes take dye very easily. But one thing I did notice is if you're doing, let's say, a layered wax melt, so a wax melt with multiple different colors, you will notice that the Ecosoy wax, the colors tend to merge into each other a lot faster than the Kerasoy wax. I don't know if it's just me or how I was making my wax melts or the concentration of the dyes that I was using, but I've always noticed that the colors tend to merge together a little bit faster than I would have liked compared to, let's say, the Kerasoy wax. But it's not like a major problem for me, and it's not going to be something that you really notice. But if you want, like, let's say, crisp lines and you don't want colors to bleed into each other, Ecosoy wax tends to do it a lot faster than Kerasoy wax. With Kerasoy wax, I don't think I've had an issue, or like a major issue with colors merging into each other. So there's just one of those factors that you could take into consideration. Another difference between the waxes is that I've noticed that the Ecosoya wax tends to be a little bit more translucent in color compared to the Kerasoy wax, which is a lot more creamy in color. This is when it's in its plain white form, and also when you add colored dye. you will notice that there's a lot more translucency compared to the Kerasoy wax, which tends to be a lot more creamier in color. I've got two little samples here, but you can't really see the difference on camera. But this is the Ecosoy wax, and this is the Kerasoy wax when they're both melted. You probably won't see it on the camera, but you will notice that in person, the Kerasoy wax, again, tends to be a lot more creamier than the Ecosoy wax. But this is like a minor issue. So if you don't really care about those types of things, then you can just ignore this point. But if you're like really looking at it, you can see that the Ecosoy wax, again, is a bit more translucent in color, and the Kerasoy wax is a lot more creamier in color. If you don't really care about those types of things, then this won't apply to you. But if you do and you want a bit more of a solid color, then maybe go with the Kerasoy wax. But again, the choice is up to you. Another difference is both of these waxes take roughly the same amount of time to harden up. But you will notice that the Kerasoy wax hardens up a lot faster. And again, I think this might be due to the fact that this is a soy wax blend compared to Ecosoy wax, which is completely soy wax. The difference isn't major again, but it's one of those things that you might notice when you try and demold. If you both do them at the same time, you'll notice that maybe the Ecosoy wax is still a tiny bit soft and may stick to the mold compared to the Kerasoy wax, which has had the same amount of time, which will come out completely solid. But that's just one of those things that I've noticed, is that they take just a little bit more time on the Ecosoy side just to completely firm up. But again, the difference is minimal. So if you're leaving them to set overnight, that's perfectly fine. Just shooting back to that point about Ecosoy taking a little longer time to harden up, you will notice that Ecosoy wax, when it's still melted, it's got a lot more work time compared to Kerasoy wax, which when it starts to solidify, it's a lot harder to pour. So you might get a bit more lumps compared to the Ecosoy wax, which at a low temperature stays quite smooth, even if you pour it lower than the temperature than you're used to for a wax melt. So that's just one thing that you should keep in mind, that you'll get a smoother pour at a lower temperature with Ecosoy wax compared to the Kerasoy. Okay, one final difference between Ecosoy wax and Kerasoy wax. I did mention this in the beginning, that there is a smell associated with the Kerasoy wax. What I did notice is with the Ecosoy wax, if you make a wax melt and the fragrance evaporates after being in a traditional wax melt burner or even an electric wax melt burner, you will notice that there is no smell whatsoever. However, if you compare it to the Kerasoy wax, if you put it in a traditional wax melt burner, you know, with just the candle at the bottom, there is a very minimal smell from the original wax after the fragrance has evaporated. But if you put that in an electric burner, you will notice that the smell gets amplified, and not a lot of people like that smell, and it can cause a few issues. Especially if you're selling it, people might think that there's something wrong with the wax or something like that. But that's one thing you have to take into consideration, is that the Ecosoy wax is completely odorless. The Kerasoy wax has a smell. The Kerasoy wax, the smell is not a major smell, but some people really don't like it. So that's just the one final difference that I wanted to point out between the two waxes when they're melted. And those are the differences between Ecosoya Wax Melt Wax and Kerasoy 4120 Pillow Wax, which I also use for wax melts. I'm sure there are a few more differences that I haven't pointed out in this video, but those were the major ones that I noticed during my times working with Ecosoya Wax and Kerasoy Wax. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you wanted to make a part 2 or talk about wax a bit more, let me know in the comments below, and I will see you on the next one.